Well folks, here we are at the Grownup motorcycles, and quick thank you to them straight away, because this is going to be an interesting little ride. Look at this KTM 2020 1290 V-twin SuperDuke R. Okay, those that saw my last week's video, I did a very quick spin on the Streetfighter V4S Ducati, and this has got to be that bike's direct competitor, without shadow of a doubt. This bike's got to be that bike's direct competitor. Slightly less power, but still bags of power, bags of grunt, lightweight. And if I was to compare the two very quickly, I'm going to say that Ducati pure performance, KTM raw performance. Now I say raw because this bike is incredibly light, it's short, it's stocky, it's got a forward slant on riding position. Even though it's a Street Fighter, a wide bars, you're still quite forward on it. You're in control of it, you're actually tucked in there quite nicely. Ride position wise, riding position 31 inside leg, sit fat footed on the floor, very comfy. Pegs are slightly higher than perhaps the Ducati. I'm going to compare it to the Ducati a lot because I believe these two are pretty much the direct competitors. Engine wise, and that's the biggest thing about this bike, is the engine. The engine is just phenomenal. The power it puts down, the way the V-twin pulses and drives you forward. It's not raw like V-twins used to be. I've had a couple of KTM V-twins over the last few years. In fact, I've had 4 KTMs. This V-twin is an evolution on all the bikes that have gone before, because even at low revs, sort of 2,500–3,000 RPM, it will still pull cleanly off the throttle. The throttle as well, let's talk about throttle. The throttle, if you put it in sport mode, it is a hair trigger. Oh, look at that, it's so bloody easy. Just wafted along, what, 30 mile an hour limit, and you're just over 30. So you've got to be careful with this bike. It's like a hair trigger, so responsive. It is, the bike is so light and the engine's so responsive. The slightest whiff on the throttle, and there ain't much slacking, the slightest whiff on the throttle just leaps the bike forward. The acceleration this bike produces, it's just raucous. Other bikes are seamless and smooth, and yeah, they're rapid, but they're rapid at high revs, and they're rapid once you get going, once you're on it. This is rapid from the off. You want to pull out for an overtake, no matter what gear you're in, no matter what revs you've got dialed in, you could have 2,500 revs. It will still overtake most things with ease. It is just blisteringly fast. Again, is that the whole story? This bike is built for playing on. I mean, let's face it, I've said it before, KTM don't make a sensible bike. I mentioned earlier, even the KTM 125 Duke looks like it wants to fight people. This bike is it's designed for one thing, and that is having a hoon on. It's designed for tearing around on. You can ride it normally. You can ride it like a normal commuter bike. You could probably commute on it. It's quite good in traffic. It's quite sort of the way the engine's much smoother now. The electronics keep everything nice and calm. It steers beautifully through traffic, but it's not designed for being in traffic. It's not designed for being in a town. It's not designed for a motorway. I mean, thankfully, there isn't a screen. Thankfully, there is no weather protection whatsoever, because that's the only clue you've got to how fast you're going, because you can't see this speedo when you're riding at high speed, because it's quite low down at the front. One of the things I've noticed about this bike as well is you feel like you're right over the front. It feels like a dirt bike, and that's got to be KTM's DNA. My 1190 Adventure R, it just felt like a massive motocross bike, and this feels like a massive supermoto bike. It's got that sort of edginess to it. It's got that. It's not nervous, but it's got that responsiveness that makes you think it's nervous, but it's not. It will go exactly where you want it to go, but it will stay on line exactly as you want it. It will drive out those corners with ease. It will do all that stuff. But it does it in such a way that's raw rather than refined. I'm not being cruel. Now let's wind back a bit. The first SuperDuke I rode was probably 2007, 2008, just before I bought my 990 Adventure. And back then, the 990 SuperDuke was just stunning. I loved it, and the only reason I bought the 990 Adventure was because I went to dirt biking and off-roading, and I wanted to travel and luggage and all that sort of stuff. Let's just pause for a minute, because you can probably hear in the background the old roughy-tufty boys are coming on their bikes. I rode that SuperDuke and I thought it was the best handling, it was the nicest backlane B-road sort of bike that I'd ridden ever. And then shortly after that, the Evolution came in. They made one with the bigger tank, bigger monoblock brakes. They then, the Supermoto, the SMT, the 990 Supermoto, the 990 SMR, all those V-twin Supermoto bikes and the SuperDukes have all evolved and evolved over the years, and they've turned into this. I think what we're looking at now is the evolution of perhaps 15 years of development. Yes, more power, but they've kept that V-twin lightweight trellis frame, streetfighter sort of raw edge to it. What they've not gone for, they've not sanitised it. They've not gone, oh, let's make a nice bike for everybody. They've made a bike as raw and as rider focused as possible. You see, sitting on the bike, right, riding position. And you know, I've said it before. We're in a position where we can sit on the bike. Now, I'm flat-footed both sides, as you can probably tell, but it's quite forward. It's quite canted forward, and when your feet are on the pegs, your knees aren't massively high, but again, tucks in nicely. You've got movement. You can move back on the seat. You can move forward in the seat. You've got these bars. You can get over. I would probably want them bars rolled forward slightly to make my elbows out a bit more. I might even fit risers. But this sort of thing is just brilliant for what it does. But you feel like you're right over the front. There is nothing there, and you feel like you can see the front wheel, which is very dirt bikey like. You could normally see the old mudguard flapping in the breeze on a dirt bike or a supermoto bike. So when you're on it, you can get into the bike. You can do the push and pull, and you can use counter steering techniques. You can hold yourself back on the brakes. The levers are brilliant. The levers and brakes all fall to feet and hands quite nicely. Sadly, this bike, as far as kit's concerned, is absolutely stock. It hasn't even got the dongle to put the extra sort of performance edge on the electrics. Not that that's a bad thing, but you know, 800 quid for a plug to activate stuff the bike's already carrying. I think that's a bit steep. Come on, Mr. KTM. If you're making a bike for 16 grand, put a quick shifter on it. I mean, you know. Nice. Exhaust wise, silencer, the rear silencer, I think that's quite nice. I wouldn't bother paying loads of money to get a new one of them, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This bit at the front, don't want a belly pan. I mean, the belly pans are a bit 90s, aren't they? They're a bit sort of, you know, bit 90s. Yeah, they are a bit old-fashioned, a bit retro nowadays, I suppose, belly pans. But I think that, I know they've had to put all that stuff down there. I know that all that stuff required for emissions and to get the flow right. It's a massive engine. It's two, you know, it's two 700, almost 700cc pistons banging against each other. But they need to get all the gases out. I know that. But that to me is a bit steampunk. It's a bit sort of boiler house thing to me, really. But there you go. That's just my opinion. Pillion seat, For a pillion, neither use nor ornament, to be honest. You might get a little, if you want to go take it on a trip, weekend or something, credit card sort of touring, you put a little Krieger pack across the back, a little bit of a tank bag. But to be honest, it's not for touring. I don't think it's a touring bike at all. It's a plaything. It's a bike to get out on a, you know, on your own or with a few mates and just go for a play, go for a blat, and enjoy doing it. Enjoy doing it because you know you've got the bike that is going to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you're going to want to ride it hard. And that's what this is all about. I love street fighter bikes. I love the whole ethos of a sports bike, but one that you can ride all day, you can chuck around on the streets, and you can throw it into tight and twisty corners on bumpy lanes. You haven't got to go to a track to get the most out of it. You can use it on the road. So that's where I am with this. Would I buy this over the Ducati? Now there's a question. This is £4 cheaper than Ducati, so to start with, it's got a big advantage. But the Ducati's got an advantage because I think the Ducati suspension's better. That semi-active Öhlins suspension system on the Ducati, I think, is better as a package than the suspension package currently on this bike. But caveat, I haven't played the suspension on this bike. I haven't got it set up for me yet. Performance-wise, I can't see much in it, to be honest. On paper, the Ducati's got more power, but in the real world, there's nothing in it. This feels faster, but then this feels faster because you're having to hang on to it and you're having to ride it by the scruff of its neck. The Ducati is as fast, and some would say, could argue faster, but it feels more in control because it's a much more controlled package. And like a lot of racers, you always say, you know, if a bike's easier to ride, you can go faster. And I think that would sway some riders, I think, to buy the Ducati over this, because they can go faster, easier. After an hour of tearing around on this, you wouldn't know about it, because this bike talks to you, the Ducati sings to you. That's the difference. This bike shouts at you, the Ducati sings to you. Apart from that, there's not a lot else I can say. Start again. I am not a fan of matte black on motorbikes, but I think this plastic finish and this subframe is lovely, and they finished it off with a nice gloss black on the tank. That, to me, that and the lovely gloss orange frame and the stainless steel can saved it for me, because the matte black thing doesn't float my boat. But this, in this trim, is gorgeous. And the other colourway, the sort of slightly sort of bottle greeny flight, that's a nice colour as well. Anything, right? My name's Reg. If you've liked what you've seen, you want to see a few more, give me a subscribe button, press that, click the like button. My channel is quite new still, so I'm just getting used to it, getting used to how I'm going to play it, what my sort of timetable of testing regime is going to be. Maybe 2 a month, maybe 1 a month, I don't know, we'll see. But I'm going to focus on bikes that I like to ride. What you won't see me doing is telling you how to wash your bike. You won't see me telling you how to check your tyre pressures. And the more I get going, the more I get into it, the slicker these tests will become. The more polished, hopefully. Once I get practiced with the old editing thing, they'll get a bit better. Okay, so that's it, folks. That has been... bloody hell. Going to sum up ever so quickly while I'm at it. I've really enjoyed this, and again, thank you to Laguna Motorcycles for letting me borrow it for a couple of hours. They do put themselves out to lay these bikes on for customers and people like the likes of me, so easy to ride, quick as well, that's the thing. Oh, we've gone into mode again. We've gone into MTCC failure mode again. That's the third time on this test ride that I've had an MTTC failure. So it's not going to let me have more than 5,000 revs here. Oh, there you go. If I just bought this and that kept happening, I would not be happy.